This is Nick with logosbynick.com, and in today's tutorial I'll be demonstrating how you can create this vector graphic using Inkscape that depicts a hand coming out of a computer screen reaching for money being pulled away on a hook. And this could be used to communicate some kind of like fraud or scam or something like that. I think it's just a pretty cool graphic. I used it myself on my own blog a while back, and I'll be showing you how to create this with Inkscape. So let's go ahead and get started. By the way, if you'd like to know how you can make Inkscape appear dark and with these custom icons, a link to that information will be in the description of the video. And the first thing we want to do in Inkscape is make sure we have the document set up so that we are all working on the same page. So I'm going to go to View. I'm going to make sure, View, make sure that's set to Custom. And then I'm going to zoom in at 1:1. And then I'm going to open up the Align and Distribute menu with that button up there. And we're going to want last selection chosen from this drop down. And then we're going to open up the Edit Objects, Colors, Gradients, and Stroke menu. And what we want to do now is go to File, Document Properties, and we want to take this window right here. Take that window, set the display units to px for pixels, and the page border, we're going to uncheck that box to turn off the page border. And the first thing we're going to create here is the actual computer screen. So let's grab the Squares and Rectangles tool, and I'm just going to create a rectangle like that, about the width and height of a typical monitor. And I'm going to take this circular node in the top right corner and just drag that down a little bit to give it rounded corners like that. And we could finalize that by going to Path, Object to Path. Let me get rid of that. We're going to take the opacity of this and bring this down about in half like that, so it's halfway transparent. And then we'll go to the Select tool, and I'm going to right click that object and go to Duplicate. And I'm going to turn that red, and then hold Control and take this bottom arrow down here and just pull that out to make it bigger than the graphic beneath it. And then just hold Control again and click and drag it down to about here. We're creating this little gray strip at the bottom of the monitor right here. So go ahead and drag that down to about there. Click on the black rectangle, right click it and go to Duplicate. Hold Shift, click on the red rectangle and go to Path, Intersection. And that should be set like that. What we could do now is click on the black rectangle, bring the opacity all the way up, and I'm just going to make this not quite black but like 90% gray, which is the next color, it's the next shade over from black. I noticed that works pretty well. I'll click on this little red strip down here, bring the opacity of that all the way up, and I'll make this a light shade of gray. And now I'm going to create the actual screen that goes inside of here. So we'll grab the Rectangles tool again and just create another rectangle going in here, like that. But we're going to want this rectangle to have sharp corners. So click on this box up here that says Make Corners Sharp. And that should make the corners sharp. And then I'm going to grab the Select tool, and I'm just going to alter each individual side so that it fits in there nicely. So that it looks about even, about right. And I'm going to change the shade of this. If you notice here in the thumbnail, I have it to like a faded sky blue like that. So we'll go and change that to like your color pickers are down here. I'll change that to like a faded sky blue. That's pretty good. And once we've done that, I want to hold Shift and click on the gray strip right there and just make sure it's centered up on the vertical axis by clicking the button that says Center on Vertical Axis. And then we can click off of it to deselect everything. Now, if you notice what I did here, I made this a little too wide. If you want to correct the width of yours, if you made yours a little too wide or maybe a little too narrow, you could easily fix that by clicking and dragging over all of it and going to Path, Object to Path, and then we'll go to the Edit Paths by Nodes tool, and I'm just going to click and drag over these nodes all the way here to the right. And then I'll hold Control and grab one of these nodes and just click and drag it in like that. And you could pull this out or you could pull it in like that. And I think that should do it. Let me hit Control Z to see how it worked. Okay, yeah, that's much better. I'm going to hit Control Shift Z to redo it now. Alright, I'm going to leave that as that is. So I'll go back to the Select tool. And what we're going to create now is this little base right here. So I'm going to grab the Rectangles tool again and just create a shape right here like this. Maybe about that wide. We'll grab the Select tool and send that to the bottom like that. And I'm actually going to pull this down here out of the way. I'll grab the Circles and Ellipses tool, and I'm going to draw an ellipse like that. And let me make this red, just so we could differentiate it. Bring the opacity down, grab the select tool, and I'm just going to put this right up above here, above this rectangle, maybe right about there like that. Maybe over a little more. That's pretty good. And I'll right click that and go to duplicate, hold Control on the keyboard to lock it onto the to the horizontal axis, and just click and drag it to the right to about the same side. It doesn't have to be exact. We're going to make it exact right now. So what we're going to do now is hold Shift and click on the other red ellipse and go to Path, Union, and then hold Shift and click on the blue rectangle and center it on the vertical axis. And then go to Path, Difference. I'm just going to take this and put this down here like that. I'm going to hold Shift, click on the gray strip, and center it on the vertical axis. And we can click off of that to deselect everything. What we want to do now is put that little shadow on there. So to do that, I'm going to click on this gray strip, right click that and go to duplicate. And I'm going to make this a darker shade of gray by under the Fill tab, choosing the HSL tab, and I'll come down to the L row and slide that to the left a little bit to make that a little darker. And I'll take the opacity of that and bring that down in half as well. And I'll just hold Control and click and drag this down until it's about that far down like that. Maybe a little higher up. And we're holding Control because it locks it onto the vertical axis. If you don't hold Control, it's kind of just like wobbling around out in space like that, which we don't want. So it's important to hold Control while we do that. Okay, so now that we've done that, I'm going to click on this little, click off of it to deselect everything, and then click on this blue object down here. Right click that and go to duplicate, hold Shift, click on the black shape right there, or the gray shape, and go to Path, Intersection. And then come up here where it says Lower Selection one step. Go ahead and click that and lower it beneath there. And now we want to click on that blue shape and grab our dropper tool, which is over here. Or if you're using a laptop, there should be a little arrow right here. If you click that arrow, a little pop-up menu will come up and it'll let you choose the dropper. But for those of us using desktops, the dropper icon's right there, or you could just press D on the keyboard, or you could press F7 on the keyboard. And I just want to make that the same shade of gray this is. And now we just got to put the base on there, the bottom part of the base. So we'll grab the Squares and Rectangles tool and just create a little rectangle going over the bottom like that. And take this little node up here to the top right and bring that all the way down so it has rounded edges. Grab the Select tool, bring the opacity all the way up. And I want to make this the same shade of gray that this dark shade is right here. So again, we'll grab our dropper and make that the same shade like that. And we'll grab our Select tool and just position this where it ought to be, like that. Then hold Shift, click on the gray strip up here, and center it on the vertical axis. And now we can click off of the graphic to deselect everything. So we now have the computer screen set. So I'm just going to click and drag over all of that and hold Control and Shift and scale it down a little bit. And just move it off to the side, because we're going to come back to that in a little while. What we're going to create now is the hand. So to do that, I'm going to grab the Squares and Rectangles tool. And I'm going to create a rectangle like this. And I'm going to take this top node up here. Actually, let's make the corners sharp first, and then we'll go ahead and round them. So we'll grab this top right node up here and bring that all the way down like that. I'm going to make this object black and bring the opacity down about in half. And then I want to create another rectangle that's about a little less than half the width, like that. And I want to make that red. And then we'll go to the Select tool, and I'm going to click and drag over both of those and go to Path, Object to Path. And then click off of it to deselect everything. And what I want to do now is take this red object and then hold Shift and click on the black object and click the button over here that says Align Left Edges of the Objects to the Right Edge of the Anchor. So it stacks it right up against the right side like that. And what I want to do now is click off it to deselect everything and take just the black shape right here. Right click it, go to Duplicate, hold Shift, click on the red shape, and again click that button to stack it up against the right side. Click off of it to deselect. We're going to do that again with the red shape. Click on the red shape, right click, duplicate, hold Shift, click the black shape, stack it up against the right side with that button, click off of it to deselect, and we're going to have to do this 2 more times because there's four fingers we're doing in total. We're going to do the thumb last. So we'll take the black object. Instead of right clicking and going to duplicate, you can just hit Control D, then hold Shift, click on the red object. Alright, we'll do this one more time. Click off of it to deselect. Control D to duplicate the red object. Hold Shift, click on the black object, stack it up against the right side. And then finally we can click on the black object, Control D to duplicate, hold shift, stack it up against the, click on the red object and then stack it up against the right side. Click off it to deselect. And then we want to take a copy of this black shape right here and just put it off to the side. We're going to use that as the thumb in a minute. So we'll right click that and go to duplicate, put that off to the side. And what I want to do now is hold shift and click on the black object to the left right here. Actually, no, click off of the graphic to deselect everything. And then hold shift and click on this black graphic right here. And then while holding shift, click on this black graphic right here. And what we want to do is right click on that and go to copy, because we're going to need the width of that object right there. So we're going to grab the squares and rectangles tool now and just click and drag to create a rectangle like that. And we're going to make that black. And then we're going to go to edit, paste size, paste width like that. And I'm going to grab the select tool, hold shift, click on the black object over here and stack it up against the left side, or actually align left edges with that button there. Click off it, deselect, and then take the black object and then grab the rectangles tool again so we could take this node up here. First what we want to do is make the corner sharp again, and then we'll bring down this node to give that a rounded corners like that, and that should be good. And now we can go back to the select tool and hold shift and click on the other black objects and unify them all together by going to path union. And then we can take the red objects, click on the first red object, hold shift, click on the other two, and go to path union, and then hold shift and click on the black object and go to path difference. And we now have the fingers set. So what we want to do now is grab the edit paths by nodes tool and make these fingers a little longer, some of them longer than the others. So to do that, I'm going to click and drag over this center finger, the middle finger right here, and then hold shift and just bring that up. This is the longest, this is going to be the longest finger like that. Then I'll click and drag over these three nodes, the ring finger, and hold control, just bring that down a little bit. That's going to be the third tall, it's going to be smaller than the index finger. I'll take these three nodes up here, the pinky, and hold control and bring that down lower than the ring finger like that. So that'll be the shortest, and that should be pretty good. And what I'll do now is I'll grab the this extra object right here, and this is going to be the thumb right here. And then I'm going to put that right about, position it right about here where about the thumb would be. And then I'll right click that and go to duplicate. And then I'm going to click on this again to get the rotation handles and hold control and rotate this around two steps like that. And I'm going to take this and put this right about here. And you know what? Maybe I'll hold control and rotate it around a third step. Yeah, we want to do 3 steps. That's pretty good. And I'll put that right about there. And I'll take this object, bring this right about there. And what we want to do now is hold shift and click on the click on both of those two objects right there, right click it and go to duplicate, and then go to path intersection, and then we can turn that red. And then I want to duplicate that by hitting Control D, and then hold shift, click on the black object up here and go to path difference, and then path break apart, and then hold shift and click on the top half of that graphic to deselect it, and then press delete to get rid of that part. And we're going to do that again, but to this object now. So we'll take the red object, Control D to duplicate, hold shift, click the black object, go to path difference, and then path break apart. And then hold shift and click on the black object to deselect that. So we just have this object selected, and press delete on the keyboard. Now we can hold shift and click on those 3 objects right there and unify them all together by going to path union. And what we're going to want to do now is grab the edit paths by nodes tool and click over these nodes up here and just hold control and drag that down to make that a little shorter so that it looks more like it makes sense as a thumb. And depending on how yours came out, you might want to just, like, you know, play with it a bit and make it look right. Like my hand here, the fingers look about right, but like the hands part looks a little short. So I'm going to use the edit paths by nodes tool and click on the hands part and click and drag over these bottom nodes over here and hold control and just pull them down a little bit. You may have to bring yours up or pull them down depending on how yours came out. That should be pretty good. And I'll grab the select tool again. I'm just going to hold control and bring this down so that it's flush with the bottom of the hand right here. And then grab the rectangle tool. I'm going to create the wrist right here. So create a rectangle for the wrist. Let's make those corners sharp. We'll grab the select tool, put it right about there. Hold shift, click on the base of the hand and center it on the vertical axis. And then hold shift and click on the thumb, and let's unify them all together by going to path union. Then we just hold control and shift and scale it down like that, and we have our hand set. So I'm going to take the opacity of this and bring it up, and then I'm going to color it in. I'm going to start with like a shade of yellow over here and come up here to the HSL. Under the Fill tab and the HSL tab, I'm going to take like the H row and slide that to the left a little bit to give it a touch of orange. Then I'll take the L row and slide that to the left a little bit to make it more tan. Maybe I'll dull that shade a little bit by bringing the S row to the left. And that looks pretty good. Actually, no, maybe a little more vibrance in that. Yeah, that's good. And now we're just going to create like the shadow that goes off the side of the hand. To do that, we'll right-click that and go to Duplicate. And I'll just bring the L row to the left a little bit to make that a little darker. And then I'll right-click that and go to Duplicate. And I'll make that blue and bring the opacity down in half. And then hold Control and just bring this over to the left until the right edge of the right pinky is going halfway through the gap between the pinky and the ring finger, like that. Right about there, that's pretty good. Or somewhere about in that range. And then hold Shift and click on the orange shape beneath it and go to Path, Difference, and then Path, Break Apart, and then hold Shift and click on this orange object to the right here to deselect it. And with all that other nonsense still selected, we don't need that. Just press delete on the keyboard to get rid of that. And that should be that. So I'm going to click and drag over both of those and group them together. We're going to create the collar and the sleeve of the shirt there. So to do that, it's pretty simple. Just grab the rectangle tool and create a rectangle. Bring the opacity up. I'm going to make this a very light shade of gray, almost white. I'll go back to the select tool. And then I'll right click that and go to duplicate. And I want to make this one a little bit darker. And take this left arrow and bring that over to the right for the shading. And then I want to take this lighter gray object, right click that, go to duplicate. And I'm going to make this like a dull shade of green, maybe something like this. If you see what I did here in the thumbnail, that's about the shade I used. That should be pretty good. Maybe take away some of that. Some of the, whatever row that is. They're not telling me for whatever reason. Oops. And just hold Control and click and drag it down here. And then hold Control and grab the bottom arrow over here and scale that up so it's a little wider than the white cuff coming out of it. And then we can right click that and go to duplicate. And there we go. These letters are back. So I'm going to take this L row and slide this to the left to make that a little darker. And then take this left arrow and bring it over there like that. And then I can hold Shift and click on the other object and just lengthen that about that much. That's a pretty good length right there. I can click and drag over all of that and bring it over here to where our computer screen is. And I'll just hold Control and scale it down or scale it up according to how big or small yours is. And that's pretty good like that. And click off it to deselect. And actually, you know what I want to do is click and drag over all of those and group them together with the Group Selected Objects button. And then hold Shift and click on the blue screen and align the bottom edges with that button there. Align bottom edges so that it stacks up against the bottom of the blue screen there. And then we can click off of that to deselect everything. So our next step is to create the little fish hook here, which should be pretty simple, shouldn't take too long. Let's grab the Squares and Rectangles tool and just click and drag to create a rectangle like that, about that width and that height. And I'm going to take the node up here to the top right and drag that all the way down so we end up with something like that. And let's come down here to the color picker. I'm going to give that a red outline by holding Shift and clicking on the color red. And then I'm going to turn off the fill by clicking the X. And we're going to adjust the thickness of this red outline. Yours is probably different than it is on my screen, depending on what you previously used. I was previously using this thickness, so that's what it defaults back to. So let's take the opacity of that and bring that down a little bit. And we can change the thickness by coming over to the Stroke Style tab. And from this drop down, we want to make sure we have pixels selected. And if you see, you'll see here, like mine's set at 56. I think that's a pretty good thickness. Maybe I'll set it just to 60, see how that looks. That's pretty good. And we convert that to a path by going to Path, Object to Path. And what we want to do now is grab the Bezier pen, which is over here, or you can press B on the keyboard, and bring it to the lower left outside edge of the shape like this, and click, and hold Control and bring this line straight across to the right, and click, and then bring it up here to the top right edge, and click, and hold Control and bring it straight through like that, and click. Now we can let go of Control and just finish it up going around the entire outside of the graphic. Back to the starting point. Go to the Select tool, hold Shift, click on the red object, and go to Path, Cut Path, wherever that is. There it is, Cut Path. And click off of it to deselect everything. And what that did was it split it up into two parts. So we could take this top part over here and just press Delete on the keyboard to get rid of that. And we could take this object right here, just come over here to the Stroke Style tab and make sure it's set to a rounded join and a rounded cap, and you should be good to go. And I'm actually going to take these ends here, make them a little longer. I'm going to go to the Edit Paths by Nodes tool, and I'm going to hold Control and just take this node and bring that up a little bit. That's pretty good, and I'll bring that up a little bit as well. And I'll go back to the Select tool. I'm actually going to make this a little thicker. I'm going to try for 75, see how that looks. Alright, that's pretty good. That's a good thickness. So what I want to do now is do another cut path. So we'll grab the Bezier pen again, which is right here, or again, press B on the keyboard. And we're going to start out right outside the bottom center of the graphic and click. Hold Control, bring the line straight up and click, and then let go of Control and finish the shape up going around the outside of the object. Go to the Select tool, hold Shift, click on the object, and go to Path, Cut Path, and then click off of that to deselect everything. And what that does is it gives us two separate objects that we could split it up into. Because if you notice here with the hook goes above the dollar, and then the back of the hook goes behind the back of the dollar like that. We're going to need that hook to be in two separate objects in order for that to work. So that's why I did that. So speaking of which, let's create the dollar bill next. Actually, you know, let's finish up this here. I'm going to hold Shift and click on the other red objects. We have them both selected. Bring the opacity all the way up and go to Path, Stroke to Path. And I want to make these a shade of like silverish blue. Something like that. That works pretty good. I'll go to the Fill tab and maybe make that a little lighter. That's pretty good. Click off it to deselect, and let's create our let's create the hook part, the actual sharp part of the hook right here. So we'll go to the Squares and Rectangles tool and hold Control and Shift in the keyboard and click and drag to create a square like that. And we're gonna have to clean that up a bit. We'll give this sharp corners, and we'll get rid of the outline by coming down to the color picker and holding Shift and clicking the X. And again, I'm just going to take the opacity of this and bring it down in half. I'll convert it to a path by going to Path, Object to Path. And I want to grab the Bezier pen. Shortcut for that would be B on the keyboard. Turn on the Snap to Cusp Nodes, and then snap the cursor onto the top left corner and click. And then snap it onto this corner and finish it up going around the outside. Go to the Select tool, hold Shift, click on the object, and go to Path, Difference. And we can just take this object and bring it over here. And I'll make this red just so we can differentiate it for now. I'll hold Shift and click on the left side of the fish hook right there and align the left edges like that and click off it to deselect. And click on just this graphic and hold Control and just scale it down like that. And I'll just hold Control and bring this up a little bit. Bring the opacity all the way up. And I'll grab the dropper again, make this the same shade of blue that is. And I'll grab the Circles and Ellipses tool because we're going to have to put the like where the string goes into the bottom of the hook there. I'm just going to hold Control and Shift and click and drag to create a perfectly round circle like that. Go to the Select tool, position this about halfway through there like that. That's pretty good. Right click that and go to Duplicate. I'll make that white and then hold Control and just click and drag this in. Click and drag, scale it down like that. Make it about that width. That's pretty good. And we'll create our string. So I'm going to grab this Squares and Rectangles tool and click and drag to create a rectangle going through there. You know what? We're going to have to make that, we're going to have to color that in order to see it. So let's make that a light shade of blue. That's pretty good. Take this bottom node, this top right node here, and just bring that all the way down to give it rounded corners. Finalize it by going to Path, Object to Path. And I'll grab the Select tool, I just want to put this right about there like that. And then I'll right click that and go to duplicate. And I want to click on it again to get the rotation handles and hold Control and just grab one of the corner arrows and rotate it around until it's sitting horizontal like this. And then we'll go to the Edit Paths by Nodes tool, select those right 3 nodes and hold Control and click and drag them in like that. We'll go to the Select tool, position this right about there. Click on it again to get the rotation handles. Hold Control and rotate that maybe 1 step to the left like that, maybe 2. No, 1 should be good. And then I could hit Control D to duplicate that, and then just hold Control and click and drag it straight up like that. And we'll do that one more time. Control D to duplicate, straight up like that. And I'll click and drag over all 3 of those and make sure they're spaced out evenly by clicking the button that's down here in the Distribute panel that says Make Vertical Gaps Between Objects Equal. And that's pretty good. We can unify that all together now. Go to Path, Union, and then hold Shift and click on the blue string right there and center it on the vertical axis, and then click off it to deselect everything. So let's click on this, actually, you know what? Yeah, let's click on this right half of the hook right there, and then hold Shift and click on the large circle and unify them both together by going to Path, Union, and then hold Shift and click the white circle and go to Path, Difference. Whoops, did I do that right? Path, Difference. There we go. And I'm just going to zoom out now by holding Control and rolling down the mouse wheel and click and drag over all of that so I can hold Control and Shift and scale it down like that. And let me zoom back in. That's pretty good. And the final step would be to create the dollar bill that's going to sit on the fish hook. So to do that, it should be pretty simple. We'll grab the Squares and Rectangles tool, click and drag to create a rectangle that would be about the width and height of a dollar bill. Make the corners sharp. And I'm going to make this, you'll see here in the thumbnail, this is like a lighter shade of green. I'm going to make that a lighter shade of green. Like that, that's pretty good. I'll go to the Select tool and duplicate that by hitting Control D. And I want to make this a darker shade of green. Maybe like almost like an emerald green, like a darker, something like that. And I just want to bring these edges in to make it smaller like that. That's pretty good, something like that. And we can click and drag over both of it and make sure it's centered on the vertical and horizontal axis. That's pretty good. And now we just have to cut out little circles out of the corners, like you see here on my thumbnail. So we'll grab the Circles and Ellipses tool and hold Control and Shift and click and drag to create a circle. And we're going to want to make this a different shade just so we can see it. Bring the I'm just going to make mine red. Bring the opacity down about in half. That's pretty good. Go to the Select tool, position that right about there. Maybe I'll hold Control and make that a little smaller. That's pretty good. Right click that and go to Duplicate, hold Control, move it to the right. Hold Shift, click on the other one, unify them together by going to Path, Union. Then we could duplicate that by hitting Control D and just hold Control and bring it down here to this side. Maybe up a little more, that's pretty good. And then hold Shift and click on the other set of red circles and unify them together by going to Path, Union. And then hold Shift and click on the dark green rectangle, the smaller dark green rectangle, and center it on the vertical and horizontal axis. And then go to Path, Difference. And then we're going to put another circle right in there. So we'll grab the Circles and Ellipses tool again, hold Control and Shift to create another circle. Go to the Select tool, hold Shift, click on the dark green object, and center it on the vertical and horizontal axis. And go to Path, Difference. And now we can click and drag over both of those and group them together with the Group Selected Objects tool. And just bring this over here. I'm going to turn off the Snap to Custom Node so it doesn't give us any trouble. And I first want to click on this left side of the hook right here. Click on that and then raise that to the top with this button. Raise Selected Objects to the top. And now we could take this dollar bill and put it in there like that. I'm just going to hold Control and Shift and scale it down. We want to position it so that the circle in that dollar bill fits nicely within the edge of the hook right there. And if you want to zoom in and out, I'm just holding Control and rolling up and down the mouse wheel. That's a good way to zoom in and out. And then I'll click on the dollar bill again to get the rotation handles and hold Control and just rotate it maybe 1 step to the left like that. I'd say that looks pretty good. Now let me press 1 on the keyboard to zoom out to 100%. And click and drag over both of those, or all of this, and just position it right above our graphic over here. And we have set, and we're all set. We have finished creating our graphic with Inkscape. So if you have any questions, let me know. And as always, thanks for watching.